Mr. Chairman, although enrollment in the ACA is relatively high in Florida, particularly in the Miami-Dade metropolitan area, choices continue to decrease and premiums continue to rise. This year, the counties in my district have lost insurance carriers. Monroe County lost 1 carrier, and Miami-Dade lost 2 carriers participating on the exchange. I've heard from people in my district about how the current system has reduced their choices and increased their out-of-pocket costs. Emily, my constituent, explained that she is paying over $700 per month for a plan with a deductible that is over $6,000. But still, she has been unable to find a doctor in her area who will accept her insurance. Even though she has insurance, her options are severely limited and premiums continue to increase. Mr. Miller, I have a question for you. These examples that you've heard here today, and I think it's important that we raise them because statistics are fundamental to understanding what is happening in the world, but these real-life human examples matter also. Do you believe that these examples are isolated, unique to our districts, or are these the types of things that are happening all over the country?
Well, there is a battle of warring anecdotes, and everybody has to have their respective horror story, and you can get them on both sides. In the aggregate now, though, we know that this is not working out and reaching its residual level. I'd comment somewhat in light of some of the discussions here that I'm surprised at this embrace by folks who are more favorable to the Affordable Care Act of what you might think of as trickle-down economics. Let's first take care of the hospitals. Let's first take care of the insurers, and maybe some people on the ground might eventually get some benefit from this. There was a very interesting academic study of the Medicare expansion population, one showing that it had grown quite larger in terms of the cost per capita for the new newly eligible able-bodied adults, but it hadn't necessarily delivered any more services. There's another study that indicated the Medicaid beneficiaries actually valued the coverage they received at about 20 to 40 cents on the dollar. So we're pumping more money into the system, but it isn't necessarily getting down to the ground level where it's actually improving people's care. And that's because it's a system designed not for the beneficiaries at the end of it to be calling the shots, but somewhere along the line we've determined what's good for them and what they should receive. And it works for other people in the system, doesn't necessarily deliver that value at the bottom line for the consumers we supposedly care about.
So, Mr. Miller, are you suggesting that perhaps major healthcare special interests such as hospital chains, insurance companies, and pharmaceuticals were too influential in the drafting of the last healthcare reform legislation?
The previous administration had to cut a deal, and in some cases they had to give as well as take. And part of that deal was to make sure that they had placated those interests first in order to get the legislation passed.
Mr. Graham, with regards to the individual mandates, some suggest, well, this is, as we have kind of concluded here, not working very well. Perhaps the solution is to raise the penalty and coerce more people into signing up for health insurance. I don't think that would be a very popular measure, and I assume most members of this committee and in this House would probably not be predisposed to supporting that kind of measure. What are some alternatives?
I think Mr. Miller proposed some good alternatives. I think Professor McDonough's criticism of those alternatives is also valid. There is a certain population, if you're just going to say you've got to maintain continuous coverage, you've got to, or pay a fine or whatever, there is some level of the population that will not pay that. This is just a reality. They will, you know, when you lose your job, your mortgage payment or your rent comes first, and you're going to drop your health insurance premium. So there'll always be some population that has to, you know, I hate to say be taken care of, but the social safety net. And I know on your side of the aisle, you've talked about high-risk pools, things like that. I would just like to point out that, you know, Massachusetts had a reform that had some good things, some bad things. The gentleman from New York who's left, every state had all these tools at their disposal. So what I like to say is if we don't know the perfect answer, the magic bullet, let's let 50 states try and figure it out and learn from them.
Thank you. I yield back.